After 8 years of being in love, he accepted a family-arranged engagement, casually saying, "It's a business marriage. You're still the one I love most." Then he turned to me and laughed. After sleeping with me for 8 years, who would still want her? I laughed too. After 8 years of being together, he still didn't understand me. I, Vivian, have never had my wings broken by his attempts to control me. The intense pain coming from my abdomen was like a cold hand ruthlessly gripping my uterus, then violently yanking it downward. I curled up on the carpet of this penthouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side overlooking Central Park, cold sweat soaking through my silk robe. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the New York night sparkled like diamonds, while on the 85-inch TV screen directly across from me, the engagement of the century that had the whole country in a frenzy was being broadcast live. On the red carpet of the Met Gala, flashbulbs were flashing madly. In the center of the frame, the man I had also loved for 8 years, Preston Thorne, was wearing a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, dashingly having another woman on his arm, Serena Vanderbilt, the jewel of the Vanderbilt family, possessing an illustrious surname and political resources capable of swaying congressional votes. She was stunningly beautiful tonight in a vintage champagne-colored haute couture gown, and the blue diamond necklace named Heart of the Ocean around her neck was enough to buy half of Brooklyn. The reporters' microphones were almost poking Preston in the face. "Mr. Thorne, regarding the rumors of a marriage alliance between Thorne Capital and the Vanderbilt family, is tonight considered the official announcement?" Preston turned his head to the side. Those gray-blue eyes that had gazed at me affectionately countless times were now brimming with a tenderness I had never seen. He faced the camera, flashing that signature smile enough to make Wall Street stock prices rise. "Serena is the most charming woman I have ever met." His voice was low and magnetic, piercing through the screen and drilling into my ears like poisoned honey. "The union of the Thorne and Vanderbilt families is God's best arrangement." The cramping pain in my abdomen reached its peak at this moment. A stream of warm liquid slid down the inside of my thigh, blooming into a shocking patch of dark red on the carpet. I knew who that was. That was mine and Preston's child, a life deemed an accident before it even had time to take a look at the world. More accurately, it was an extremely dangerous ruptured ectopic pregnancy. With trembling hands, I grabbed the phone that had fallen to the side. The screen displayed over a dozen missed calls, not from Preston, but from my private doctor. She was frantically trying to contact me to tell me how terrible the blood test results were. Gritting my teeth, I dialed the number that I had kept pinned to the top for 8 years. Beep, beep. The long waiting tone felt like it was slicing away at my nerves. I knew where he was. He was right there in the screen, right in the center of that radiance where all eyes were fixed. Finally, the call connected. "Vivian?" Preston's voice was kept very low, carrying obvious impatience and a tension masked by the noisy crowd around him. "I told you, tonight is a very important occasion. Whatever little tantrum you want to throw, save it for when I get back." Preston. I was in so much pain I could barely make a sound, cold sweat dripping from my eyelashes as my vision began to blur. "Save me. I'm bleeding. The baby." "Enough!" He interrupted me roughly, his tone filled with condescending disgust. "Just to stop my engagement, you're even making up lies like this now? I had my assistant book a checkup for you last week. If you were pregnant, wouldn't my medical team know?" "No. It's an ectopic pregnancy. I'm dying." I used all my strength, my fingernails nearly tearing through the expensive carpet. "Vivian Lynn, you're a scientist. Don't act like an attention-seeking crazy woman." The sound of camera shutters came from Preston's end. Clearly, he was distracted by maintaining that perfect PR image. "Serena is watching me. Remember your place. You signed an NDA. Stay put in the apartment, and tomorrow I'll have the CFO add another $1 million to the budget for that crappy lab of yours. Don't call me again. Beep." The call was disconnected. In that instant, I also heard the sound of something shattering completely. Not just my body, but also that so-called true love I had lived for and hypnotized myself with for 8 years. On the TV, Serena is nestled in Preston's arms, receiving the blessings of all of New York, while I, like a dying fish, lie in the luxurious cage where he keeps his mistress, waiting for my blood to drain dry. This is the man I've loved for 8 years. I developed patents for him in the labs at Yale, helping Thorne Capital slaughter the competition in the biomedical sector. To avoid affecting his family inheritance rights, I willingly became his shadow in the dark, not daring to even walk through the same lane at security checkpoints. What I got in return was just the phrase, "crazy woman," and $1 million in hush money. The extreme pain actually makes my brain unusually clear at this moment. This clarity carries the scent of blood, yet it is sharper than ever before. I can't die. Vivian, you absolutely cannot die here, and certainly not like a joke, becoming a piece of salacious tabloid filler about an Asian female body found in Thorne Mansion in tomorrow's papers. I throw away my phone, summon my last bit of strength, and crawl towards the door. The survival instinct triggers an explosion of willpower. I yank down the coat from the entryway to wrap my bloodied body and stumble into the elevator. The doorman downstairs sees my pale face and is so scared he almost spills the coffee in his hand. "Miss Ava, oh my God, you are—" "Call an ambulance." "No, there's no time, and an ambulance will attract reporters. Call me a car. To Presbyterian Hospital." I grip the doorman's arm tightly, my nails digging into his uniform. "Hurry!" 10 minutes later, I collapsed in the back seat of the taxi, my consciousness wandering on the edge of darkness. Outside the window, Manhattan was ablaze with lights, every single one mocking my stupidity. By the time I arrived at the emergency room entrance, I could no longer walk. Medical staff rushed out pushing a gurney. "BP 60/40, signs of shock, prep for surgery immediately." "Where's the family? Who is the family?" the nurse shouted. In that moment, the stark white lights of the emergency room made me dizzy. I lay on the stretcher, surrounded by the clamor of instruments and footsteps. No family. I heard my own terrifyingly calm voice, as if talking about someone else's business. "I'll sign it myself." "This is a major surgery. We might have to remove a fallopian tube. Are you sure?" "Give me the pen." Trembling, I signed Vivian Lynn on the surgery consent form. Every stroke felt like I was severing ties with the humble, stupid Vivian of the past, whose head was filled only with love. The moment the anesthetic was pushed into my veins, I took one last look at the clock on the wall. 9 o'clock sharp in the evening. It was at this very moment that Preston should be in the banquet hall of the Metropolitan Museum, down on one knee, slipping that priceless diamond ring onto Serena's finger, making a vow to spend a lifetime together. Good. Truly good. Preston Thorne, since you can treat human life like dirt for your family interests, since you think everything in this world can be bought with money, then, from the moment I open my eyes, we're going to settle this score slowly, with interest. The operating room doors shut heavily, completely cutting off that noisy, hypocritical, sickening world. Darkness washed over me, and I said to myself in my heart, "Good night, Vivian. Good morning, Dr. Lynn." When I opened my eyes again, the sky outside the window was gray and gloomy, and the blizzard had stopped. It was so quiet in the VIP ward of New York Presbyterian Hospital that only the monotonous beeping of the monitor remained. The anesthesia hadn't completely worn off yet, but I could still clearly feel that fresh wound on my lower abdomen, empty, like a giant black hole swallowing up the past 8 years of my youth. "Awake?" A cold female voice sounded from the corner of the ward. I struggled to turn my head, my pupils constricting sharply. The woman sitting in the armchair was absent-mindedly flipping through a medical record in her hand. She wore a sharply tailored Burberry trench coat and 10-centimeter red-bottomed high heels, her signature chestnut big waves scattered casually over her shoulders. Serena Vanderbilt. If it weren't for the wound hurting too much, I might have laughed out loud. What kind of melodramatic soap opera script is this? The victor, who was receiving the adulation of thousands on the TV screen last night, is now sitting by my hospital bed, looking like she's admiring a defeated stray dog. "Are you here to laugh at me?" I asked with a hoarse voice, my throat feeling dry like it had been sanded by sandpaper. "If you want to give me a check to make me get the hell out of New York, please just put it on the nightstand. I don't have the energy to play palace intrigue games with you." Serena closed the medical chart and casually tossed it onto the small round table nearby. She stood up, the sound of her high heels striking the floor crisp and rhythmic, walking step by step to my bedside. Vivian Lynn, Yale University PhD in biochemistry, holder of 3 core patents, and formerly the invisible operator behind Thorne Capital's biomedicine sector. She looked down at me from above. Those cat-like green eyes didn't hold the mockery I imagined, but instead carried the sharp scrutiny of someone sizing up prey. "You're even thinner than you look in photos and even stupider." I sneered and tried to prop my body up, but the sharp pain made me fall back into the pillow. "If you're here to stake your claim, there's really no need. That man, I don't want him anymore. I'm giving him to you." "Giving him to me?" Serena raised an eyebrow as if she had heard a hilarious joke. "Do you think I'm the kind of woman who picks up men from the trash heap?" She pulled a tablet out of her Hermes Birkin bag, tapped it a few times, then turned the screen toward me. On the screen was a rather grainy surveillance video, the location being the backstage of last night's Met Gala. In the video, Preston was yelling into the phone with an anxious look on his face. "Take down all the trending topics for me. I don't care how much it costs. Serena absolutely cannot see that damn tweet." "What? Someone filmed Vivian getting into an ambulance? That's fake. She's putting on a show. Blacklist that media outlet." The video came to an abrupt end. Serena took back the tablet, her tone indifferent. "Last night, someone filmed you going into the ER covered in blood. Although they didn't get your face at that time of night, it was enough to spark speculation. Preston spent $2 million in PR fees just to suppress this news, to keep it from affecting both our families' stock prices this morning." I stared dead at that tablet, feeling as if my heart was being squeezed to the point of bursting by an invisible hand. Liang Bai Mo. He spent $2 million to cover up the fact that I almost died, yet on the phone, he cursed me out as a lunatic just because I wanted to go to the hospital. So what? I raised my head, meeting Serena's gaze. "Are you here to thank me for helping you test this man's bottom line?" "No." Serena shook her head. She leaned down, and the smell of expensive perfume mixed with disinfectant rushed into my nose. "I'm here to thank you for not only not dying, but for keeping your brain." She suddenly took a document out of her bag and threw it right onto my quilt. "What is this?" I frowned. "A letter of intent for investment." Serena crossed her arms, the corners of her lips curving into a meaningful smile. "I'm investing in that independent lab of yours. The initial injection is $50 million with only one condition." I looked at her in disbelief, almost suspecting this was a hallucination caused by the anesthetic. $50 million? Invested in her love rival? "What's the condition?" I asked warily. "The condition is—" The amusement in Serena's eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a chilling coldness. "You have to help me destroy Thorne Capital." I froze. "Why?" I was puzzled. "You just announced your engagement last night, and all of Wall Street is cheering for your union. You're the eldest daughter of the Vanderbilt family. Why do you want to destroy your own fiancé?" Serena turned and walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky, her voice revealing a deep weariness. "Because I don't like being traded like merchandise, especially when the buyer in this deal is a fool who uses my money to keep other women while thinking he's so devoted." She turned around, her gaze piercing. "Preston thinks he controls everything. He thinks that just because he handled my profit-driven father, I'll just obediently be a trophy socialite. He even planned it out, to keep you on the side after the wedding, giving me a respectable marriage and giving you guys a stable love nest. It's absolutely disgusting. It turns out she knew everything. It turns out that in this 3-person movie, I was the only one who was truly blind. Vivian, Serena called my name, no longer with that distant tone from before. I know you hold a core technology for a new targeted drug, which is Thorn Capital's lifeline for the next 5 years. The reason Preston has been keeping you hidden away isn't just because of so-called family pressure, but more so because he hasn't fully swindled that technology out of your hands yet. My heart gave a jolt. That was my life's work, the result of me spending day and night in the lab. Preston indeed hinted many times that I should transfer the patent rights to the company, but I always kept my guard up and didn't relent. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Serena walked back to the bedside, extending a hand to me, a hand that wasn't wearing that massive diamond engagement ring. We don't need to fight over a rotten man. Compared to fighting over men, I prefer investing in smart women. How about it, Dr. Lin? Are we doing this deal? Looking at her outstretched hand, slender, strong, with nails manicured to perfection. In that moment, I suddenly understood a lot of things. Nothing in this world can be taken for granted, especially that love built on self-sacrifice. Preston spent 8 years weaving a cage for me called Future, attempting to squeeze dry my talent and youth. And now, someone handed me a key. I smiled too. Even though my wound was still faintly throbbing this time, it came from the bottom of my heart. I reached out and tightly grasped Serena's hand. Deal. Serena smiled with satisfaction. She fished a lipstick out of her bag, wrote a number on a napkin, and stuffed it into my hand. When you get discharged, call this number directly. My private legal team will help you handle everything, including that so-called confidentiality agreement. After saying that, she turned to leave, but suddenly stopped at the door and looked back at me. Oh, right, forgot to tell you, I was actually in the ER last night, too. I froze. What? I was the one who signed for you. Serena shrugged. Although you signed it yourself, the doctor said it was an emergency, so having one more person to vouch for you is always good. Plus, I also went ahead and blocked that emergency contact Preston's number for you. You're welcome. The door was gently closed. Clutching the napkin with the number on it in my hand, I finally couldn't hold back my tears. Not for Preston, but for this absurd yet real fate. In this cold, calculating Manhattan, just when I thought the whole world had abandoned me, the one who reached out to help turned out to be the love rival I had imagined. I wiped my tears and picked up my phone. There was an unread text on the screen from Preston's assistant. Miss Ava, Mr. Thorne asked me to inform you that he will be vacationing in the Hamptons with Miss Serena this week, so please do not disturb. Also, $1 million has been deposited into your account. Please check. Looking at that ice-cold message, I didn't feel the heartache I used to. Instead, I felt an unprecedented wave of disgust. I opened my banking app and looked at the string of numbers that had appeared in my account. 1 million. To buy out my life and that of an unborn child. So cheap. But I didn't send it back. I opened the transfer page and donated the entire sum directly to a charity dedicated to helping women suffering from domestic violence, writing Preston Thorne's name in the memo field. After doing all this, I tossed the phone aside and closed my eyes. Enjoy your vacation in the Hamptons, Preston, because this will be the last peaceful time of your life. The storm is just beginning. 5 years. For Manhattan, 5 years is enough for several skyscrapers to rise from the ground, and enough for countless Wall Street myths to crumble into dust. Boston, Kendall Square. This is the heart of global biotechnology, where the air itself is filled with the scent of innovation. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Aura Bio headquarters, holding a cup of freshly brewed black coffee. Outside, the Charles River shimmered with light. It was a far cry from that New York winter of gray skies and the smell of disinfectant. Dr. Lin, Assistant Amy pushed the door open and entered, holding a thick folder. The Phase 3 clinical data for the new targeted drug Aura-X is out. The results are nothing short of perfect. I turned around and took the file. Aura Bio, the company Serena and I co-founded 5 years ago. For these past 5 years, I've practically lived in the lab day and night, working like a maniac, all for this final blow. Also, Amy paused, her tone a bit subtle. Thorn Capital has sent another invitation. This time it's an email personally sent by their CEO, saying they are very sincere about wanting to discuss patent licensing. Preston? I raised an eyebrow, casually flipping through the printed email. Reading between the lines, it was full of arrogance and condescension, as if being able to work with Thorn Capital was a huge honor for me. Even when asking for a favor, this man still couldn't shake that high and mighty tone. Tell them I don't have time. I tossed the email into the shredder. Also, book me a ticket back to New York, first class. Okay. By the way, Dr. Lin, there's a biotech summit in New York tonight, and the organizers have been inviting you to attend as a mystery guest. I heard Thorn Capital is one of the sponsors, too. I paused, a cold sneer curling the corner of my mouth. Then let's go. It's time to go back and see some old friends. New York, Manhattan, Chelsea Piers. The charity gala tonight was star-studded. As the dark horse of the biotech sector in recent years, the mysterious founder of Aura Bio had been attracting much attention. I was wearing a deep V-neck black velvet gown that Serena had sent me specifically from Paris. The cut fit my figure perfectly. It wasn't flashy, yet exuded a cold glamour that was impossible to ignore. The moment I walked into the banquet hall, the bustling crowd seemed to fall silent for a second. Countless eyes landed on me, filled with awe, curiosity, and a certain confusion of déjà vu. Holding a glass of champagne, I walked through the crowd without looking sideways. Who is that? I don't recognize her, but her presence is so strong. I heard it's the founder of Aura Bio, that mysterious Vivian Lin. My God, she's so young? I thought she'd be some old academic. Whispers rose and fell around me. I didn't care. My gaze searched the crowd until it settled on the center of the banquet hall. Preston Thorne still looked as polished as ever. Time seemed to have been exceptionally kind to him over the last 5 years, yet the fine lines at the corners of his eyes and the faint gray at his temples betrayed that he hadn't had it easy these past few years. Thorn Capital has been going downhill these past few years. Although rumors of insider trading were suppressed, the losses in their core business are an indisputable fact. They desperately need a new hit to boost their stock price, and my Aura-X is that juicy piece of meat in their eyes. Right now, he's holding a wine glass, chatting and laughing with a balding investor. Not far away, Serena is surrounded by a group of socialites, wearing a polite smile, but her eyes keep drifting toward the entrance. When our gazes met in mid-air, Serena gave me an almost imperceptible wink and raised her glass. The show is starting. I walked straight toward Preston. As I approached, the surrounding crowd automatically parted to make a path. Preston seemed to sense something and turned around. When he saw my face clearly, the glass in his hand jerked violently, spilling pale gold champagne onto the cuff of his expensive suit. Vivian? His voice was trembling, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. That little woman who used to only hide behind him, afraid to even speak loudly, that ex he had casually discarded, thrown away like trash, that shadow he thought had vanished into the vast sea of people, was now standing right in front of him, shining brilliantly like a queen. "Long time no see, Mr. Thorne." I smiled, my tone distant and polite. "I heard your company is very interested in my patent?" Preston stared straight at me, his gray-blue eyes flashing with shock, confusion, and finally turning into some kind of fanatical delight. "It really is you. Vivian, I knew it. I knew you were still alive." He even forgot there were other people around and actually tried to reach out to grab my wrist. I took a half step back, calmly avoiding his touch. "Mr. Thorne, please behave yourself," I said coldly. "If you want to talk business, please make an appointment. If it's to catch up, sorry. We aren't close." "Not close?" Preston looked like he'd been stung. He lowered his voice, his tone carrying his usual possessiveness. "Vivian, stop it. I know you're still angry about what happened back then, but I've been looking for you for these past 5 years. Do you know how worried I was about you?" "Worried?" I laughed out loud. "Worried that if I died, there'd be no one to take the fall for you? Or worried that I didn't die and would come back to expose your true colors?" "You..." Preston's face changed, and just as he was about to flare up, he noticed the glances coming from around us and had to force down his anger. "This isn't the place to talk. Come upstairs with me. I have something to say to you." "I don't think there's anything left for us to say." "It's about the patent." He urgently threw out the bait. "As long as you agree to license Aura X to Thorne Capital, I can let the past go. Even, we could start over. You know Serena and I are husband and wife in name only. You're the only one who's ever been in my heart." Listen to that, such a familiar formula, such a nauseating stench. 5 years have passed, and this man really hasn't grown at all. He still thinks that as long as he crooks his finger, I'll be that same fool who is at his beck and call. Start over? I looked at him, eyes full of pity. "Preston, have you forgotten? The me of today is no longer that Vivian who could only survive by clinging to you." I took a business card out of my clutch and gently tucked it into his suit pocket. "Want the patent? Fine. Tomorrow morning at 10, bring your sincerity and come to my office. I won't wait if you're late." After saying that, I didn't spare him another glance, turned around and left. Behind me, Preston was still frozen in place, like a ridiculous clown. And in a corner, not far away, Serena was swirling her wine glass, the smile on her lips deepening. "This is just the first step. Preston, did you think this was the end? No, this has only just begun. I will make you watch everything you take pride in crumble bit by bit, just like I did back then. Only this time, the one holding the power of life and death is me." The next morning, the conference room at Aura Bio's New York branch. I sat at the head of the table, watching the waiting area outside through the one-way glass. Preston Thorne, this Wall Street shark who once made countless people make way for him, was currently pacing anxiously in the hallway. He checked his watch from time to time, his brows locked tight, clearly unaccustomed to the taste of being left hanging. His assistant, a young girl who looked like she'd just graduated, was trembling as she handed him a cup of coffee. "Take it away!" Preston waved his hand, and the coffee spilled out, splashing onto the assistant's skirt. He didn't even apologize, just impatiently tugged at his tie. I watched this scene coldly. 5 years ago, I used to be that cautious too, terrified that one wrong look would make him unhappy. But now, I just find it laughable. 10 o'clock, sharp. "Let him in," I said to Amy. The conference room door was pushed open. Preston strode in, and the moment he saw me, the gloom on his face instantly vanished, replaced by a mask of deep affection. "Vivian!" He walked straight up to me and placed a huge bouquet of red roses on the conference table. "These are your favorite Corolla roses. Remember? Before, whenever you were angry, I'd give you these and you would forgive me." The roses were a blinding red, each bloom looking as if it were dripping blood. I glanced at them, my tone flat. "Mr. Thorne, this is a sterile office area, and pollen allergens are prohibited. Amy, throw them out." "Yes." Amy unceremoniously picked up that expensive bouquet of roses, turned, and threw it into the sorting bin outside the door. Preston's expression froze on his face, the embarrassment of that public slap in the face making the corner of his eye twitch. But he quickly regained his composure, pulled out a chair, and sat down across from me. "All right, Vivian, let's talk business." He took a thick document out of his briefcase. This is the acquisition contract drawn up by Thorn Capital. We'll acquire Aura Bio at 30% above market price and retain your core R&D team. Of course, in exchange, you need to sign a non-compete agreement and... He paused, his gaze turning somewhat suggestive, and come back to me. I didn't look at that contract, just crossed my hands on the table, looking at him with a half smile. Come back to you? As what? A mistress? Or a shadow that can't see the light? Vivian, you know my situation. Preston sighed, putting on the look of a victim. My engagement to Serena is just a temporary measure. For these past 5 years, I've thought of you every day. As long as you agree, once the company gets through this crisis, I'll immediately break off the engagement with Serena, marry you properly, and bring you back to the Thorn family. A proper marriage? It sounded like I was hearing a fantasy. Preston, did you forget you still have an old father lying in the ICU? If he knew you wanted to marry a Chinese woman with no background, would he get so mad he'd pull the plug himself? At the mention of his father, Preston's face darkened. You don't need to worry about that. As long as I have the Aura X patent, no one will be able to shake my voice on the board. When that time comes, no one can stop me. He reached across the table, trying to hold my hand. Vivian, trust me just this once. I haven't lived well at all these past 5 years. That woman Serena doesn't understand me at all. She only knows how to spend money and put on a show. Only you truly understand me. I looked at the hand he stretched out, well maintained with rounded nails. It was these very hands that had pushed me into the abyss, and also countless times startled me awake from nightmares. I jerked my hand back, took a document from the filing cabinet behind me, and slammed it down in front of him. Since Mr. Thorn is so sincere, why not take a look at this first? Preston picked up the document in confusion. Flipping to the first page, his pupils suddenly dilated. It was a detailed due diligence report. It not only listed all the financial loopholes of Thorn Capital over the last few years, but more critically, attached was a genuine diagnosis regarding his father, old Mr. Thorn's condition. Toxic encephalopathy? Preston's voice turned shrill with shock. How is this possible? The doctor said it was the after effects of a stroke. The stroke was indeed a trigger, but what truly keeps him in a coma is long-term excessive use of sedatives and a certain neurotoxin. I pointed out calmly, and the purchase records for this drug, although laundered through many layers, ultimately point to one account. The actual controller of that account is your mother, Madame Eleanor. You're talking nonsense! Preston stood up abruptly, slamming the documents on the table. Vivian, if you want revenge on me, fine, but this is slander. You think forging a few documents can drive a wedge between me and the family? You know perfectly well whether it's slander. I stood up, my presence not losing to his in the slightest. Preston, you think you're the one running the show, but actually, you're just a marionette in your mother's hands. To keep control of the Thorn family, she could even act against her own husband. What do you think she'll do to you once you're no longer useful? Preston's face turned deathly pale, cold sweat seeping from his forehead. He was a smart man, and smart men are often the most suspicious. He might have had his suspicions over the years, but he didn't dare think too deeply, let alone investigate. And I just ripped this fig leaf right off. I haven't sent this report to the board yet. I walked over to him and whispered in his ear, Want the patent? Fine. Trade the 10% shares of Thorn Capital you hold for it. Also, I want you to personally investigate your father's affairs and hand the evidence over to me. You're crazy. Preston's eyes widened. 10% shares? That's my lifeblood. And if I get dragged into this too, the Thorn family is finished. That's your problem. I took a step back, returning to my cold indifference. Since you keep claiming you love me and are willing to give everything for me, How come you don't even have this much sincerity? It seems your so-called deep love is nothing more than this." "Show him out!" I didn't give him another chance to speak, directly pressing the call button. 2 burly security guards walked in. As Preston was being escorted out, he looked back, unwilling to give up, and shouted my name. "Vivian! Don't you regret this? You'll pay the price for this." The moment the door closed, I let out a long sigh of relief. Price? I've already paid it. With my unborn child, with my 8 years that were trampled on like trash. Now, it's your turn. I picked up my phone and dialed Serena's number. "The fish has taken the bait. Prepare for the next step." Serena's languid yet delighted voice came from the other end. "Beautiful job, Dr. Lin. Come to my place tonight. Let's pop champagne to celebrate. By the way, I'll show you another big gift I've prepared for you." Hanging up the phone, I looked out at the bustling streets of Manhattan. "Preston, do you think this is over?" "No, this is just the appetizer. The real main course is yet to come. I'm going to make you destroy the thing you care about most with your own hands, make you taste what it's like to fall from the clouds into the mud. That taste, I've tasted it, and it's bitter. Now it's your turn." Serena's home wasn't one of those traditional Manhattan luxury mansions, but a loft in Soho converted from an old factory. No magnificent crystal chandeliers, only exposed red brick walls and modern installations full of artistic flair. This was her secret base, and also her haven to escape that suffocating golden cage of the Vanderbilts. When I arrived, she was sitting barefoot on the carpet, with several scattered documents and 2 already poured glasses of Dom Perignon champagne in front of her. "Cheers to the imminent fall of the Thorn Empire." She raised her glass, excitement shimmering in those green eyes. I took the glass and took a sip. The cold liquid slid down my throat, bringing a hint of tipsy pleasure. "This is the big gift you mentioned?" I pointed at the documents on the floor. "This is just the appetizer." Serena picked up a document and handed it to me. "Look at this. These are all the private account statements of my cheap fiancé from over the years. Guess where else he's been spending money besides those so-called PR fees?" I flipped open the document, the dense data making me a bit dizzy, but soon, several abnormal expenses caught my attention. "A nursing home in Miami." I frowned. "A fixed monthly expense of $50,000 to a recipient. A caregiver named Maria Santos?" "Exactly." Serena snapped her fingers. "I sent people to investigate. The person living in that nursing home is none other than Preston's first love, the one who supposedly died in childbirth long ago." My heart suddenly sank. First love girlfriend? That white moonlight who supposedly died in a car accident during his college years, the one he still can't forget? She didn't die? Not only did she not die, she even gave him a son. Selena tossed me a photo. In the photo, a little boy about 6 or 7 years old was sitting in a wheelchair basking in the sun. Although his expression was a bit dull, those eyes and brows were simply a miniature version of Preston. Cerebral palsy. Serena's tone was calm, yet revealed a chill. That car accident years ago. Although it didn't take that woman's life, the child was premature and oxygen deprived, resulting in a lifelong disability. To avoid affecting his family inheritance rights, Preston publicly claimed that both mother and child had died, but in reality, he's been keeping them in Miami the whole time, playing the devoted lover persona on one hand while using money to seal lips on the other. I just felt cold all over. Turns out I didn't even count as a stand-in. I was just a tool he used to fill the void and conveniently exploit my talent when he couldn't face that disabled son and vegetative girlfriend. He really is rotten to the core. I threw the photo back on the table, my stomach churning. "The best is yet to come." Serena sneered. "Do you know why Thorn Capital has such a serious deficit these past few years? Besides his good mother playing dirty, Preston himself hasn't been idle. To treat that child, he actually embezzled the company's charity funds to invest in an illegal stem cell lab. And that lab is being watched by the FBI because it involves human experimentation. Human experimentation? I was shocked. Yeah, he wants to cure that child to prove his genes aren't defective. Serena swirled her wine glass. Selfish to the extreme and stupid to the extreme. This evidence, if we hand it over, and Thorn Capital is really done for. Serena interrupted me. But it's not time yet. What we want isn't just to make him go bankrupt, but to ruin his reputation completely and let that noble mother of his taste despair too. Dr. Lin, she looked at me, her gaze deepening. That report in your hand about Old Thorn's poisoning is real, right? Of course, I nodded. I analyzed Old Thorn's hair sample in the Aura Bio lab. Although it was a trace amount, it's enough to convict. Good. Serena stood up and walked over to that wall covered in photos and clues. Now everything is ready. We only lack the east wind. The east wind? Next week is Thorn Capital's annual shareholders meeting. It is also the day Preston's mother, Lady Eleanor, prepares to formally stage a coup and have Preston succeed Old Thorn as chairman. Serena turned around, a cruel smile curling at the corner of her mouth. That day will be the Thorn family's red-turning purple wedding. We are going to send them a congratulatory gift they will never forget. It was already late at night when leaving the Soho district. I turned down Serena's offer to have the driver take me. I wanted to walk alone for a while. The night wind in New York still carried a chill, clearing my head. I know every step from here on out is walking a tightrope. One slip up, and it's not just me. Even Serena will be dragged down. But I have no way back. Just as I walked downstairs at the hotel, a black Lincoln sedan stopped in front of me without warning. The car window rolled down, revealing a well-preserved face that was covered in frost. Eleanor Thorn. Get in. She didn't look at me. Her tone an unquestionable command. Let's talk. I stood my ground, just looking at her coldly. Mrs. Thorn, say whatever you have to say right here. We aren't that close. Eleanor turned her head, those gray-blue eyes identical to Preston's filled with venom. Vivian Lynn, do you think hooking up with Serena is enough to gain a foothold in this circle? That little brat is just using you. Right back at you, I retorted. Aren't you also using your son? Using your husband? Shut up! Eleanor sounded like she'd had her tail stepped on, her voice turning shrill. You lowly... She took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing her rage, and pulled a check out of her bag. $5 million. Take the money, get out of the U.S., and never come back. $5 million again. This mother and son, they really are cut from the same cloth in their emptiness. Apart from money, they seem unable to come up with anything else to solve a problem. I looked at the check and smiled. $5 million, Mrs. Thorn. Is your husband's life worth just this price? Eleanor's face instantly turned deathly pale, that bone-deep fear twisting her exquisite face. You. What do you know? I know more than you imagine. I leaned closer to the car window, staring into her eyes. For example, that neurotoxin from South America, long-term use causes brain tissue to slowly atrophy, with symptoms almost exactly identical to Alzheimer's. For example, how Manager Wyatt is not only your financial steward, but also your longtime bed partner. Ah! Eleanor screamed, shrinking back as if she'd seen a ghost. Lunatic! You lunatic! Drive, drive, fast, she roared at the driver. The Lincoln shot out like a startled beast, vanishing into the night. I stood where I was, watching the direction where the taillights disappeared, and gently brushed off some non-existent dust. Be afraid, tremble. Eleanor, I will make you repay the humiliation and pain you once inflicted on me 1,000 times over. Keep this $5 million to pay your lawyer's defense fees. You'll be needing it soon. Eleanor Thorn's late-night visit was like a catalyst. instantly turning the simmering situation white hot. I knew she was panicked. Early the next morning, I received a call from Preston. This time, his tone lacked the previous arrogance and probing, leaving only unconcealable exhaustion and panic. "Vivian, we need to meet. Right now, immediately." Location. I was in the lab adjusting the last set of data, my tone so calm it even surprised me. Presbyterian Hospital, my father's room. My hands paused. What was he trying to do? Play the family card? Or did he want to threaten me in a place full of surveillance and witnesses? Okay. Half an hour later, I appeared in that VIP suite, filled with the smell of disinfectant. Old Mr. Thorne still lay on the bed, like the living dead, his body full of tubes. The monotonous beeping of the instruments was like a countdown on his life. Preston stood with his back to me by the window, his figure looking exceptionally desolate. "You're here." He didn't turn around, his voice hoarse. "You know, when I was a child, Father was always very strict with me. He said men of the Thorne family couldn't have weaknesses. Emotion is the biggest weakness." I didn't respond, just quietly watched his performance. "Vivian, last night I saw my mother." He turned around, his eyes red-rimmed. "She told me you want to use that forged report to destroy the Thorne family. She said you're a lunatic, a demon who will stop at nothing for revenge." "And then," I sneered, "you believed it?" "I don't believe it." Preston walked up to me, his gaze complex. "I know you hold hatred, but Vivian, it's me you hate. Don't take your anger out on my family. My father, he is innocent." "Innocent?" I pointed at the haggard old man on the hospital bed. "Preston, if I said that the one slowly killing your father is that mother of yours who claims to love you, would you believe me?" "Impossible." Preston shook his head violently, as if desperately denying some terrible possibility. "Mother, although she is domineering, she loves Father, and she loves this family." "Love?" I took out a new document which Selena had someone get out of that illegal lab overnight. "Then take a look at this. These are records of your mother wiring money to that lab in your name over the past 3 years. And the director of that lab is none other than Wyatt's younger brother." Preston took the document with trembling hands, and after flipping through a few pages, his face instantly turned as white as a sheet. "No, this isn't real," he muttered to himself, his body swaying as if about to collapse. "This money, I thought it was for charity." "Charity?" I took a step closer. "Preston, your so-called charity is funding human experiments? It's letting scum like Wyatt launder money for you? You think you're saving that bastard son of yours? But actually you're helping your mother fill the hole from her embezzled public funds. You know about that child?" Preston completely broke down. It was like all his strength had been drained away as he slumped onto the sofa. "Did Serena tell you?" "It doesn't matter who told me." I looked down at him. "What matters is, if this evidence gets out, not only will your mother go to jail, but you won't escape either. Embezzlement, illegal fundraising, even indirect involvement in murder." Preston covered his face, letting out a painful whimper. "Vivian, please don't release it. As long as you don't release it, I'll give you whatever you want. Shares, money, even the position of mistress of the Thorne family, I'll give it all to you." Looking at this man sobbing in front of me, I didn't feel a shred of pleasure, only sadness. Is this the man I once loved so deeply, so fragile, so weak? "I don't want your money, and I don't want your position." I bent down, looking him straight in the eye. "I want you to do one thing." Preston looked up, a glimmer of hope igniting in his eyes. "What is it?" "At next week's shareholders' meeting, I want you to publicly announce that you are stripping your mother of all her duties and sending her to a mental hospital." "What?" Preston stared wide-eyed in horror. "That's my mother. How could I—" "That's to save yourself," I interrupted him. Only by proving she's insane can you push all the blame onto her and clear your name. Otherwise, just wait to go to prison right alongside her. This was a devil's deal. I know this is cruel, even a bit underhanded, but I have to do it. I want to turn mother and son against each other, make them slaughter one another in this coliseum named profit. Preston fell silent for a long time. There was struggle in his eyes, fear, and also calculation. Finally, he nodded slowly. All right, I agree. The moment I walked out of the hospital room, I didn't feel relieved. At the end of the hallway, Serena was leaning against the wall, waiting for me. Seeing me come out, she handed me a bottle of water. How'd it go? Did he agree? He agreed. I took the water, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip. Serena, are we being a little too ruthless? Ruthless? Serena sneered. Vivian, did you forget the blizzard that night? Did you forget what they were doing when your life hung in the balance in the ER? Mercy to the enemy is cruelty to yourself. She patted my shoulder. Besides, do you think Preston agreed just to save his own skin? No, he did it to save that illegitimate child. In his heart, that child carrying on his bloodline matters more than anyone, including his mother and including you. I froze. Right, how could I forget? That child. That hope he built up with lies and money. Serena, I took a deep breath. That child, I want to go see him. Now? Serena was a bit surprised. Yes, now. Miami. Bright sunshine, gentle sea breeze. That private sanitarium was located by the sea, the environment so beautiful it looked like a resort. Through the fence, I saw that little boy sitting in a wheelchair. He was tilting his head, looking at a flower in his hand, drooling from the corner of his mouth, his eyes empty. This was the bloodline Preston tried desperately to cure, even going so far as to commit crimes to continue. In that moment, the last bit of hatred in my heart seemed to dissipate too. Replacing it was a deep sense of powerlessness. Life is so fragile and so absurd. Let's go, I said to Serena. Back to New York. It's time to close the net. The night before returning to New York, I received an anonymous text message. No text, just a photo. In the photo, it was a scene of Preston and Wyatt meeting in a cafe. Preston was holding a document envelope, handing it to Wyatt. My heart skipped a beat. This man, sure enough, he kept a card up his sleeve. On the surface, he agreed with me, but behind my back, he was colluding with Wyatt, attempting to bite me back. Serena! I rushed into Serena's room. Plans have changed. Preston might have already betrayed the deal. Serena sat up from the bed, glanced at that photo, yet showed none of the panic I had imagined. Don't rush! She put on her robe unhurriedly, the corner of her mouth curling into a mysterious smile. This is exactly what I wanted. What do you mean? Let him think he has everything under control. Let him think he can play both sides. Serena walked to the window, looking at the night view of Manhattan. Only when he's at his most triumphant will he fall the hardest. Vivian, tomorrow we'll give him a big surprise. On the eve of the shareholders' meeting, it started raining in New York. This rain will wash away all the filth and lies of this city. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, a new era is coming. In the top-floor conference room of Thorn Capital's headquarters, the atmosphere was as oppressive as an impending storm. Around the long mahogany conference table sat suit-clad shareholders and directors. Their faces were written with unease and uncertainty, and the air was thick with the mixed scent of cologne, coffee, and anxiety. Preston sat in the chairman's seat, his face pale, but his eyes held a look of desperate ruthlessness. To his left, the seat that should have belonged to Old Thorn was empty, and to his right, Lady Eleanor sat, clutching a string of pearls, her expression haughty, as if she were still the imperious matriarch of the Thorn family. As an independent director, Serena sat at the other end of the long table, idly twirling a fountain pen in her hand. Today she wore a white Saint Laurent Le Smoking suit, looking both sharp and languid. And I, as the representative of Orabio, sat in the corner as a special guest, quietly waiting for that moment to arrive. Everyone, Preston cleared his throat, breaking the silence first. The main purpose of calling this extraordinary general meeting today is to discuss several important issues regarding the company's future development. First, regarding the licensing of the Aura X patent. Wait a minute. Madame Eleanor suddenly interrupted him. She slowly stood up, her gaze sweeping across the room like a blade, finally fixing on Preston. Before discussing business, I think it's necessary to clean house first. She took a document out of her handbag and slammed it heavily onto the table. I have here evidence regarding serious misconduct by the current CEO, Preston Thorne. He has not only embezzled massive amounts of company funds, but is also suspected of colluding with external forces to hollow out Thorne Capital. The whole room went into an uproar. The shareholders whispered amongst themselves, buzzing with discussion. Preston's face instantly turned livid. He hadn't expected his own mother to strike at a time like this, and he certainly hadn't expected her to actually possess evidence. "Mother, what are you talking about?" Preston barely maintained his composure. "I know you're in a bad mood because of Father's illness, but this kind of accusation carries legal liability." "Legal responsibility?" Eleanor sneered. "Manager Wyatt, bring out what you have and show everyone." The conference room door was pushed open, and Wyatt walked in. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with Preston, and shakily inserted a USB drive into the projector. On the screen, transfer records regarding Preston's illegal lab in Miami starkly appeared, along with recordings of his calls with the lab's director. As long as little William can be cured, money is not a problem. Run the payments through the company's charity fund and keep it clean. Preston's voice echoed through the conference room, crystal clear. This is slander!" Preston stood up abruptly, pointing at Wyatt and roaring. "It was you! You framed me! It was clearly you who told me to transfer that money." "Enough!" Eleanor slammed the table. "Preston, the evidence is solid. What else is there to deny? For the sake of a bastard, you actually disregarded the interests of the entire family. You aren't fit to be the heir of the Thorne family." "I'm not worthy?" Preston laughed out of extreme rage. The despair of being betrayed by his closest kin made him completely tear off his disguise. "Then what about you? My good mother? When you poisoned Father to control him, did you ever think about whether you were worthy of being a wife?" "What did you say?" Eleanor looked as if she had been stepped on a sore spot, her face instantly turning deathly pale. "You know exactly what I mean." Preston pulled the photocopy of the diagnosis report I gave him from his inner pocket and hurled it viciously at Eleanor. "Toxic encephalopathy. This is your so-called stroke. To seize sole power, you didn't hesitate to murder your husband. You're the one who belongs in prison." The conference room turned into a chaotic mess. The shareholders were speechless with shock. This drama of a wealthy mother and son turning against each other was simply too explosive. Just then, Serena slowly stood up. "Everyone, since everyone is dropping bombshells, I might as well join in the fun." She pressed the remote control in her hand. The image on the screen shifted, no longer showing accounts and recordings, but a series of high-definition photos. The photos showed intimate shots of Madame Eleanor and Wyatt in various settings, and even surveillance screenshots of the two getting a room at a hotel. Turns out the so-called financial steward takes care of not just the books, but the bed as well. Serena's tone was teasing, yet every word cut to the bone. Eleanor let out a scream, covered her face, and slumped into the chair. In this moment, all her dignity and decency were torn to shreds. "Also," Serena looked at Preston, "you said you embezzled public funds for your illegitimate child. Then let me tell you an even crueler truth." The screen switches again. It's a DNA paternity test report. "That child named Little William isn't your seed at all," Selena said coldly. "He is the bastard son of that female caregiver named Maria and your good brother Wyatt. That car accident back then was also planned by them. The goal was just to make you feel guilty so they could blackmail you long term." Preston froze. He stared dead at that report, looking as if he had been struck by lightning, stiff and dazed. "No, this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible," he muttered to himself, his eyes terrifyingly vacant. For this child, he betrayed his lover, sacrificed his reputation, and even resorted to crime. And in the end, this was all a complete and utter scam? "Nothing is impossible." Selena walked up to him. "Preston, your life has been nothing but a joke. You thought you were playing a big game of chess, but actually you are just the most pathetic pawn on the board." The doors to the conference room were pushed open again. The ones entering this time were none other than several uniformed FBI agents. Eleanor Thorne, Preston Thorne, Wyatt. The lead agent showed his credentials. "You are suspected of murder, embezzlement, illegal fundraising, and multiple other charges. You are now formally under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." Cold handcuffs were clamped onto Preston's wrists. He didn't resist, didn't even look up. He was like a shell stripped of its soul, left to be handled by others. As he passed by me, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. "Vivian," his voice was as light as the wind, "I'm sorry." I looked at him, feeling nothing in my heart. This apology, 5 years too late, meant absolutely nothing now. "Take him away." The agent gave him a shove. Preston was taken away. Mrs. Eleanor was still screaming hysterically, while Wyatt looked ashen. The farce had finally come to an end. Only Serena and I were left in the conference room, along with those dumbfounded shareholders. Serena straightened her collar and turned to face the crowd, wearing that smile peculiar to a victor. "Everyone, it seems today's meeting agenda needs a slight adjustment." She pointed at me. "Allow me to formally introduce the founder of Aura Bio and the future new owner of Thorne Capital, Dr. Lin Wei. Starting today, Thorne Capital will be wholly acquired by Aura Bio. We will use the most advanced technology and the most transparent management to bring this decaying company back to life." Scattered applause broke out, then grew more and more enthusiastic. Here on Wall Street, where profit is everything, no one cares about the fall of an old king. People only cheer for the birth of a new one. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the police cars down below speed away with their flashing lights. The Manhattan sky was still gray, but my heart was brighter than ever before. It's over. That Vivian who used to only hide in the shadows, that silly girl who humbled herself into the dust for so-called love, finally died completely at this moment. And the one who survived is Lin Wei, a queen who no longer believes in fairy tales, only in power and means. Serena walked over and handed me a glass of wine. "To the queen." I took the glass and clinked it gently against hers. "To freedom." This day was later called the Red Violet Wedding by Wall Street, because on this day the Thorne family used their fresh blood and scandals to pave a bright red carpet for the rise of 2 women. And this red carpet didn't lead to the marriage altar, but to the pinnacle of power. The collapse of Thorne Capital was like a tsunami, swiftly sweeping through the entire Wall Street. The once mighty business empire fell apart overnight. Stock prices plummeted, banks cut off loans, partners terminated contracts one after another. Everyone kicks a man when he's down. This is the cruelest and most real rule of the capital world. And Serena and I became the biggest winners in this tsunami. Aura Bio successfully completed the acquisition of Thorne Capital and restructured it into the Aura Group. I became the group's CEO, and Serena served as the chairwoman of the board. 2 women who were once considered mere figureheads and shadows now stand at the pinnacle of power in Manhattan. But I didn't have much time to enjoy the joy of victory. Taking over a mess is much harder than destroying it. Clearing bad debts, appeasing employees, reshaping the brand image. every single thing kept me running off my feet. It wasn't until a month later that I finally made time to take a trip to the federal prison. In the visitation room, Preston was wearing a gray prison uniform, looking at me through the thick, bulletproof glass. In just 1 month, it was like he aged 10 years. His originally meticulously groomed blonde hair was shaved into a buzz cut, and those once charming gray-blue eyes were filled with red streaks, his gaze ashen and cloudy. "You came." He picked up the receiver, his voice so hoarse it was like he had gravel in his mouth. "Here to see you." My tone was calm. "And by the way, to let you know that your so-called son has been taken in by a social welfare agency. Although his illness isn't curable, at least he'll have a stable place to go." Preston's hand trembled, and a tear slid down from the corner of his eye. "Thank you." "Don't thank me." I looked at him. "I didn't do it to help you. I just felt the child is innocent. He has no reason to pay for the sins of you and that woman." Preston gave a bitter smile. "Vivian, you're always so kind, even to someone like me." "Kind?" I shook my head. "No, Preston. Kindness has a bottom line. My last bit of kindness for you already died at the emergency room entrance on that blizzard night." "I know." Preston lowered his head, covering his face with his hands. "For this past month, I've been thinking about that night every day. If I had answered that call, if I hadn't hung up, if we had that child, would the ending be different now?" "There are no ifs," I interrupted him coldly. "Life isn't a movie. There are no do-overs. Preston, you reached this point today not because of bad luck, but because you were too greedy. You wanted family glory, yet also fake deep affection. You wanted to use women to climb the ladder, yet also wanted to control women to sacrifice for you. You thought you were a player in life, but actually, you are just a slave consumed by desire." Preston looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "Vivian, I did love you. That is true." "Maybe." I stood up. "But that doesn't matter anymore. Your love is too cheap. I can't afford it, and I don't want it anymore." "Take care." I hung up the phone, turned around, and left. Behind me, Preston was still banging on the glass, shouting my name, but I didn't look back. Some roads once taken, there is no turning back. Walking out of the prison gates, the sunlight was so dazzling it made me a bit dizzy. A red Ferrari sports car was parked by the roadside. Serena, wearing sunglasses, was leaning against the car door smoking. "Is it over?" She threw the cigarette butt on the ground and stomped it out. I took a deep breath. "It's over." "Then let's go." Serena pulled open the car door. "There's a dinner tonight to celebrate Aura Group going public. You're the star, so you can't be late." I smiled and got into the passenger seat. The car started, and amidst the roar of the engine, we drove away from this place that buried countless sins and regrets. Back in Manhattan, the lights were just coming on. Aura Group's IPO gala was held at the Plaza Hotel. This place was once the social venue countless socialites dreamed of, but tonight it belongs only to us. When I walked into the banquet hall holding Selena's arm, the whole room stood up and applauded. Those who once looked down on me, mocked me, and even kicked me while I was down were now all wearing fawning smiles, scrambling to squeeze in front of me just to hand me a business card. "President Lin, congratulations. Aura Group really has a bright future." "President Lin, I'm from so-and-so investment bank." "President Lin, you look absolutely beautiful tonight." I smiled as I responded to everyone, poised and elegant, yet with an insurmountable sense of distance. This is Vanity Fair. Only when you stand high enough will you realize that this world is actually very small, small enough that those big shots you once looked up to are now nothing but ants beneath your feet. "How does it feel?" Serena leaned close to my ear and asked in a low voice. "It's a bit noisy," I said honestly. "You'll get used to it." Serena raised her glass. "This is the sound of power. Though it's noisy, it's very pleasing to the ear, isn't it?" I smiled and raised my glass to touch hers. Indeed. Just then, the doors to the banquet hall were pushed open again. A tall man with a stern face walked in. He was wearing a black handmade suit, and his aura was so powerful it was impossible to ignore. The whole room instantly went silent. That was Alexander Winston, the most mysterious and powerful financial magnate on Wall Street. Rumor had it he never attended any business banquets, but right now he was walking straight toward me. Miss Lin Wei. He stopped in front of me, those deep black eyes staring intently at me. I've heard a lot about you. My heart stirred and I reached out my hand. Mr. Winston, nice to meet you. I'm very interested in Aurabio's project. He held my hand, his palm warm and firm. I wonder if I might have the honor of inviting Miss Ava to dinner to discuss collaboration in detail. Gasps could be heard from all around. This is Alexander Winston, the stoic male god who never asks women out. Selena gave me a light nudge from the side, her eyes suggestive. I looked at the man in front of me. His eyes didn't hold that fake devotion like Preston's, only an unabashed appreciation and intense aggression. It was the look of meeting one's match. I smiled. If it's about business, please contact my assistant to make an appointment. I withdrew my hand. If it's a private invitation... I paused, meeting his gaze. Then that depends on Mr. Winston's sincerity. Alexander Winston froze for a moment. Then the corners of his mouth curled into a playful arc. All right, I'll show you my sincerity. The banquet continued. The sounds of music, laughter, and clinking champagne glasses wove together, composing a picture named Success. I stood in the center of the crowd, feeling this glory that belonged to me. Manhattan has no tears, only winning and losing, and I won. I didn't just beat Preston, I won back myself. That Vivian who once wept in despair on a blizzard night is dead. The one who survived is Lin Wei, who controls her own destiny. The road ahead is still long. Perhaps there will be storms, and there will be challenges. But I am no longer afraid, because I know that no matter what happens, I will never bow my head again. I am a queen, and my crown will never fall.